This week, Module 8, we're going to be talking about how to understand school culture. And this is a great background set of information for all teachers. We're going to explain the different, sometimes divergent purposes of schooling in the United States, discuss characteristics of school cultures, norms of interaction that govern and defines culture, and the dynamics, including patterns of teacher isolation and egalitarianism. Uh, Purposes of schools. Um, you may not be aware that the original purpose was to help young people learn to read the Bible, the Christian Bible. So the schools, first public schools, were developed so that students would understand that. This decree was the old Deluder-Satan Act, was to ensure that students would be able to read the Bible to avoid being tempted and deceived by the devil, by Satan. And it required and called for public oversight and public funding of these schools. As things started moving on, there became a political or civic purpose. Founders of the country created a form of government called a representative republic, and they needed students and teachers and citizens needed to be able to participate and be able to make informed decisions. So they needed to have public schools to teach them. Kind of going along with that too, when we had a lot of child labor, schools, once child labor was kind of outlawed, what happens to all those children all day? So schools literally were made to provide a place for them to be. Um, Intellectual purposes, of course, we want students to succeed and to achieve in academic manners. The Every Student Succeeds Act uh, governs educational policy, and it stresses the intellectual purpose of schools. It requires that all students in America be taught to high academic standards that will prepare them to succeed in college and careers. As mentioned before, the founders of our country believed that public education was essential to the well being of their newly created democratic form of government. And so this legacy continues today, that we have a democracy, that every citizen should be able to learn and be provided education. There are economic purposes of schools. There's a responsibility to make good workers, to have people who are trained to be able to follow directions and to finish a job and that type of thing. There are also social purposes. You may have heard somebody say, well, yeah, he's ready for kindergarten, but he's not very mature. Well, school promotes moral development, socialization, and social class to some extent as well. The historical purpose, again, first purpose was religious, to learn to read the Bible, and the first schools, Massachusetts Bay Colony, the old Deluder-Satan Act, and some of the early leaders included Thomas Jefferson. And the intellectual purposes, develop their intellectual capabilities. Political, upholds the legacy of the founding fathers, student government associations, and community service. Economic, teaches the students to be good workers, structure and organization of the school day, the differentiating in high school that prepares students for different socioeconomic levels, and they groom students for their potential economic roles, to obey rules, work under supervision, respect authority. Social purposes, promotes moral development, moral education, character education, and socialization and social class. So the values of schools and the clues to a culture, working within the school culture, and communication methods are all important factors here. The culture is a system of shared beliefs, values, customs, behaviors, and artifacts. School culture has identifiable artifacts and behaviors. Artifacts include desks, chairs, boards, behaviors lining up, raising hands, asking permission to talk. Cultures can be localized, and it might also vary from one school to another. So the values of schools include three basic areas: compliance, competitiveness, and order. Compliance is highly valued in the school culture. Beginning in kindergarten, students are taught that your personal desires are not as important as the instructions of the teacher, and you're rewarded for being obedient and reprimanded for not complying. And of course, leeway is given to younger students, but as they get older, more compliance is required. Competitiveness. It might not be as noticeable in elementary school, but by the time you get to middle and high school, students are learning to compete for the teacher's attention, to get placed in honors classes, to get better grades, and they compete with students from other schools through sports or academic competitions. And you're also sometimes given collaborative projects, but the bigger value tends to be competition. And order. With the ratio of on average 22 students to one teacher, potential for unpredictability is significant. So order is a highly valued quality. Students learn to be orderly as they work in the classroom, pass from one classroom to another, and so on. There are many clues to a school's culture, and you need to be able to read the culture of your school. First is the physical structure of the school. That's a good place to start. You can look at the school and determine how much the community values education. If it's well maintained, even if it's old, it tells you that the community is concerned about the schooling of its young people. Cleanliness of the hallways provides important insights into how teachers treat the physical structure, and students do. Student expectations within the school community are another source of information. Sometimes students are responsible for keeping their classrooms neat and clean. Even upper middle class and middle schools where the students are required to wipe their tables and sweep their floors. In Japanese schools, students wash their classrooms, the desks, the floors, and walls every week. And so those responsibilities are not limited to just academic tasks. Teacher responsibilities also include cleaning up the classroom, monitoring the lunchroom, the hallways. On one hand, it seems like this assigning duties is a way of creating community where everyone has responsibility. And school policies are another source of information. A high school may have an open campus that allows some students to come to school later or leave earlier than other students. This is a way of preparing students for the independence of college studies. Or a school may have a locked door policy. The doors to the school are locked from the beginning of the school day till right before it ends. And this is sometimes essential to protect students from potential dangers from the community. Classrooms have even more information. The way the desks are arranged, the type of posters on the wall tell you a lot about that school and that teacher. And school leaders are particularly influential in defining school culture. The way the principal interacts with faculty and students sets the tone. Principals who know the names of the faculty members and students in a school kind of lead to an open and responsive environment. And as you go through your teaching career, you're going to have those administrators from opposite ends of the spectrum. I had a principal at one time who had the secretary create her both a Rolodex and a poster that had pictures of all the teachers with their names on them because she could never remember anyone's names. And by the same token, I had another principal who spent his day walking around from classroom to classroom, popping his head in just to say hello, see what the students were doing. And imagine that's just the same as teachers walking around the classroom and just observing. Nothing formal, just very informally walking around, making himself known. And he really affected our culture in that school. In that school, for instance, we were hit by Hurricane Florence in 89, no, not 2019, sorry. 2019, we had Hurricane Florence hit coastal North Carolina, and we were out of school for 9 weeks. And this principal had created a motto at our school. We were the Vikings, and he said, nobody rides this ship, everybody rows. And that became our mantra throughout the post hurricane time, when we were having to all eat lunch in our classrooms because our cafeteria was destroyed and all kinds of other things like that. But we would look at each other and would say, nobody rides this ship, we all row. We're all in this together. Other areas that are important, school parking lots, high schools. Boy, that can create a lot of culture right there. Okay. So working within the school culture, interactions with parents, very, very important. Sending consistent messages, enlisting cooperation and help, whether it's asking for collage materials or bringing in extra boxes of Kleenex or whatever, encouraging good conduct, and sending messages directly. Your communication methods are also very important. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it. And especially in the verbal side of it, face-to-face interactions with parents might relate to the age of the students. Many schools have formalized opportunities. You have a back-to-school night or open house. You have parent conferences. All of those are very important communication methods. In the back-to-school nights, those can be done in a variety of different ways. Sometimes everybody comes at the same time, and the teacher stands up and speaks to the parents all at once. And in that case, you need to plan your remarks carefully, make a list of the main points. Talk about the class policies, penalties for tardiness, late work, missing assignments. Make sure you're presenting a cogent overview of the course or courses. Explain the rationale, and avoid conversations about individual students. Parent conferences, keep the discussion focused on the child of the parent. Avoid any comparisons or discussions of other students. Be positive and constructive, remain objective. Consider inviting students to the conferences themselves. In electronic communication, schools might require a class or a course website. Email communication, get permission before emailing. Use your school account only. Establish an email policy. It might be that I will be checking emails every day at 3 p.m. If you send me one at 4, I won't see it till the next day at 3 p.m. Remain professional. Convey in email only information you want to acknowledge and own. On your class website, that's a fast, efficient way to maintain communication, share information about the course and upcoming assignments, and to enlist student help if you want to create and maintain the website. Try to get parents involved, manage their involvement. These benefits include improving student performance, better attendance. It requires careful management and planning, providing specific directions, training sessions, and confidentiality and other policies are important to remind parents of. When you interact with parents in the community, be respectful, never condescending, develop a thick skin, be guarded in what you say to and share with parents, and don't show any favoritism. So in the culture of teaching, um, Dan Lorty, over 40 years ago, had a sociological study of teachers published in a book called School Teacher. And he identified three characteristics that define teachers: individualism, presentism, and conservatism. Individualism is where teachers were making their own decisions about what to teach and when and how to teach it. This has kind of evolved. It's become more prominent to teach what is typically laid out in a school district's curriculum guidelines. Most school systems have committees of teachers that develop pacing guides, who develop the curriculum, and you have some leeway, but you're not really starting from scratch. Presentism is where teachers are thinking primarily here on the here and now, and they do what they need to do on the short term without necessarily thinking about what students will be learning in 2 years or 5 years. And these teachers usually develop efficient, energy-conserving routines that stick with them year in and year out. Conservatism, these teachers tend to maintain the status quo. Same learning environment that they had known as students. They teach the way they were taught. So with teacher isolation, this becomes very common. And it can be a result of the fast pace of the school day, limited control over pace or work conditions, demands that include student academic progress and physical and social well-being, and you're challenged to balance the need to decompress and plan a need for adult interaction. The egalitarianism among teachers. There's a flat career path. Veteran and beginning teachers have the same responsibilities, similar status. This can inhibit new teachers from asking for advice. Veterans may be reluctant to offer advice, and experienced teachers may feel frustrated that knowledge and expertise is not valued. I want to add another area to that too, besides the beginning and career teachers. There's also a dichotomy between core subjects and what can, in a derogatory manner, be called extracurricular or specials. Lots of other words and terms used for art, music, PE, dance, computer classes. All of those have been named core subjects by the Department of Education. So they're not extras, they're not extracurricular, they are core subjects. I've heard art teachers complain that the school will have teacher appreciation and they appreciate all the classroom teachers, but not the art teacher and the music teacher and the PE teacher. Whatever subject you decide you're going to teach, try to be sure that you're inclusive to everyone. So, norms of interaction between teachers, congeniality rather than collegiality. Congeniality is you're just speaking to each other. You're expected, but it's social. Collegiality is where you are actually working together. And that can be more beneficial in the long run. Teachers are expected to spend time in those teacher areas and talk about non-work topics. They may not feel like it. Advice giving can be indirect, couches stories of experiences, and can share stories that offer ideas. So there are some indications that a new teaching culture that really instills more collegiality rather than congeniality, teachers working together, collaborative initiatives, co-teaching, teacher induction, peer coaching, and lesson study. I had two colleagues. One was a chemistry teacher, and one was a stats teacher, and they were both teaching AP chemistry and AP stats. And they decided to co-teach, where they taught it for an entire year, where students went 1 week to chemistry and 1 week to stats, and 1 week to chemistry and 1 week to stats. And they did that all year, and they were able to work together on common goals. Many school districts have a formal mentor program. If they don't in your district, find a mentor. In the state of North Carolina, every beginning teacher has a mentor for 3 years. And so look for teachers who have time and energy to work with you if you're having to find your own. It's best if you have a colleague from the same grade level or subject area. Look for someone experienced, respected, and that you're comfortable with, especially that same grade level or subject area. It's helpful if you're going to be a music teacher that you have another music teacher who is helping you go through your beginning years. It's not quite as helpful to you to have a chemistry teacher be your mentor in music. You're teaching completely different things that may not be compatible. Some tips on how to join the team at your school. Actively join the faculty. Ask questions. Beware of your responsibilities. Don't isolate yourself. Don't be too opinionated. Find a mentor. Now, that being said, volunteer to be part of some school projects. That doesn't mean you have to do every single thing that comes along, but the best way to become part of that school culture is to keep your door open and not just shut it off to the outside world and say, I'm only going to be concerned with what happens within these four walls. And that's it for this week. And if you have any questions, let me know.